Well, as Eric referenced, CNN broadcast the second Republican presidential candidate debate this week, where it seemed some names other than Trump finally gained attention, including Carly Fiorina. Patty, we had all these kinds of candidates, jokes, things back and forth. What were your big takeaways?
Well, of course, Colorado's moment was pretty great, or moments. And Colorado, by legalizing pot, Colorado looks just more libertarian, smarter, all of which these candidates did not look. It was not the most impressive display. I cannot wait to see them coming to University of Colorado next month and to see who will still be standing and who will still be speaking, because you could see that Donald Trump, for example, as an interesting character who certainly has increased interest and livened up the whole political process so far, isn't wearing that well long term, and also has to learn to do a better high five next time he's chatting it up with Jeb Bush. The fact that Jeb Bush loosened up, and that's a little, and that's really not saying much, going from stiff as a board to slightly less stiff. He made some improvements. I thought Trump went back. Obviously, Carly Fiorina was the big winner, I think, in this, just because of the amount of time and attention she got. She looked more intelligent than the rest. I frankly loved her response on the $10 bill issue. Which was she didn't want to be marginalized as a woman. She could have said her mother, like Ben Carson, but I thought her answer worked better. So overall, I think this political season is incredible. It's great to watch everything. It's great to hear as much as we can hear, but it's going to be a long, long 14 months.
David, the debates that are going to be in Boulder aren't that far away. Do you think the group has at least been weaned down a little bit from Rick Perry's dropped out? Do you see any other people dropping out, at least names that we can recognize between now and the CU debates?
No, not between now and October. The ones, some like Jeb Bush, have enough money to keep going for a long time, and others, say Lindsey Graham, who don't have much money. You can run a campaign on fumes for a while. John McCain, as of August 2007, was on the floor, and everybody thought he was dead, and they didn't have enough money for yard signs in New Hampshire, and he managed to win the Republican nomination. So there's still a lot of fight left in all of them. In terms of a debate where you want people to see who actually has substance, has a point, not everybody wants that, but for those of us who do, clearly Carly Fiorina, number one, and Marco Rubio, number two, consistent, thoughtful answers. You may agree or disagree with their policies, but they know what their policies are and they can articulate them in a very good way. Now that Fiorina has deservedly fought her way into the top tier, now the negatives are going to start coming on her, of which the rolling out today is reprises of the ad that killed her Senate campaign in California, which is, you were a terrible CEO of Hewlett-Packard, 30,000 layoffs, and you bought yourself a corporate yacht at the same time. That could be a quite effective attack. Her defenders will say, well, everybody makes mistakes, nobody has a perfect career. But the fact is, Donald Trump, who's been in bankruptcy 4 times, not personally, just the companies and all the investors he ripped off, who I'm sure he brought in by saying, oh, this is great, this is a world-class investment, until it's like 3 years later and it's like, oh, I'm going to screw you and use the bankruptcy code. I think he might do the same thing to the American people. But Barack Obama, although it was undercovered, was a failed chief executive when he and Bill Ayers ran this huge school reform initiative in Chicago and Illinois, where they got all this goody-goody corporate money, and it was a freaking disaster. And the fact that he was a failed chief executive at that, I think, foreshadowed some of his serious weaknesses as a managerial type chief executive as president. So Fiorina is going to have to address this and convince justifiably skeptical voters about why her tenure at Hewlett-Packard should not disqualify her from an even higher management position.
Eric, these early debates are really just more for entertainment, but also it shows where the momentum can change. I mean, Fiorina's strong momentum. I'm seeing a lot less on people like Scott Walker. If you have your magic wand, maybe by Thanksgiving, what number do you think we're at? If we're at 16 candidates right now, where are we at Thanksgiving?
I don't fully know the answer to that, but I guess I would challenge on a couple of counts, Dominic. One, yes, we're at 16 candidates right now, if you're counting every name, but we're not really at 16 candidates.
Sure.
We're at, you can look at that stage and at the preliminary stage, and there are a half dozen at most, in my mind, who are plausible nominees of the party. The others are hanging around, they're taking up space, they're becoming marginally less relevant as we go. I secondly would disagree with you a bit, Dominic, and usually we're on the same page, that these debates, early debates, aren't that meaningful. They're not decisive because there's not a single voter who's going to be heard from for another 4 or 5 months. But I think they are meaningful in terms of getting voters getting to know the people, establishing a pecking order, that exchange and the interplay between the candidates. Donald Trump, and no one at this table has been more critical of him. I think the guy's an embarrassment, a buffoon, bombastic. We can go through adjectives all night long about Donald Trump, but he has served one purpose. He's getting TV viewers to tune in. There were 23 million pairs of eyeballs watching that debate the other night. Now, I'm not sure how many of them were left in hour number 3. I think the first thing we should stipulate is 3 hours is way, way too long. Second thing we should stipulate is that Fox debate was much better run with Megyn Kelly and them than this debate. Jake Tapper's a good journalist, but he was ill-served by the format of that debate. David's pecking order would be my pecking order as well. I think the most impressive ones on the night in whatever order were Carly Fiorina and Marco Rubio. That would not, the Republicans could do a lot worse than that ticket in whatever order those two names are arranged. We'll see if that's viable. I get a great kick out of thinking of all the pent-up demand in this country, and rightly so, to finally have a female president. Well, what if it was not Hillary Clinton? And what if all of those people who've been waving the Ready for Hillary yard signs were given a choice of Ms. Fiorina? And that would be quite a spectacle to watch. As to Jeb Bush, Donald Trump ought to be paying the guy rent because he's taken up occupancy inside his brain. He is so deep into Jeb Bush's head, and the two of them standing next to each other, I don't think served Jeb very well. Lastly, Scott Walker is the great shrinking candidate. He just seems to be disappearing as each week goes by. He looked completely overmatched in that debate.
Susan, after you saw what we've seen both in the first Fox debate and the CNN debate, are you excited for the debate that's going to be here in Boulder?
I am very much. I think it's great. We're a swing state. We are so relevant in 2016, and so I think it's a great coup for us and for CU. I tend, this is such a red letter day, to agree with David and Eric about how healthy it is that we have this huge, I think you called it earlier, a clown car, a huge number of candidates at this point. They are debating. I think there is a real benefit to having this debate, and kind of, I think Donald Trump is doing a huge service to the process by galvanizing people and bringing people who otherwise aren't part of the political discussion into the fold. I think the best part of it at this point, like David said, it doesn't cost a lot of money to be a candidate right now. This is not about money. It's not about ads. It's not about door knockers. It's about a real democratic process. And I hope there are as many candidates in that GOP lineup as possible going into the convention. So it's a real nominating convention. So there's really a discussion about the platform and the party's platform. And just as the clock boy kind of created a huge conversation this week about racial discrimination and profiling, I think Donald Trump is, in and of itself, he's just creating all sorts of conversations about immigration and other issues that I think benefits the party. And I think the Democrats would do well to have an equally robust debate, which they're not.
See if they might be tempted to see the kind of the ratings they're getting with these debates. Who knows?